When are these serious, very business trained board members gonna realize that he wasn't the guy for the job, the guy to run a multi-billion-dollar company? What's up, everyone? This is Alex Lieberman, co-founder and executive chairman of Morning Brew, and this is Founder's Journal. Today on the show, I am talking about imposter syndrome, something that has plagued me since starting Morning Brew in 2015 while a senior at the University of Michigan. Let's hop into it. I have had imposter syndrome since starting Morning Brew. It's taken all different forms. I've worried that I'm not skilled enough, that I'm good at a bunch of things but not great at anything. I've worried at times that my co-founder is pulling my weight and I'm just dead weight, that started an email newsletter but hasn't done anything else. I'm worried that I'm a one-trick pony and that Morning Brew is gonna be the only great business I ever build. And honestly, I'm worried that I just got lucky with this. It wasn't skill, it was luck, and I was just in the right place at the right time. For a while, I thought these feelings were just me, that I was insecure about my position as a founder because I was young. When we started the company, I was 21, and I was in an industry with a lot of older people. But as I did more research, I realized that there was nothing abnormal or out of place about what I was feeling. Imposter syndrome is this concept that many of us, actually 70% of us, feel like our success is due to luck rather than skill. And we worry and ruminate about this idea that people will find us out and they will realize one day what we realize about ourselves, that we're not actually skilled, but we're actually lucky. That is what imposter syndrome is. And imposter syndrome isn't just reserved for your career. It can be something that plagues you in your personal relationships, as a first-time parent, in sports, as well as your career. So once I realized that I am one of 70% of people that does suffer from imposter syndrome, I wanted to then understand, why is this something that eats away at me? I think the first reason is my business has always been my identity. Morning Brew literally was my every waking hour for 6 years. It took up 95+% of my identity. And so if I'm questioning the very thing that defines me, the very thing that I attribute my success to, my reputation to, it's incredibly provoking. The other reason that imposter syndrome has been such a troubling thing for me, that has stuck with me over the last 6 years of building a business, is because it doesn't just affect my career. Because I get self-conscious about my skills and I worry that I'm only lucky and that's what caused my success, it drives me to work harder. And when I'm driven to work harder, that affects my personal life. The easiest example is my girlfriend and I will be watching TV and she'll see me plugging away at my phone on Slack, getting something in at 9:30 at night. Do I need to be getting that work in then? No. Should I be present to us spending time together? Absolutely. But my imposter syndrome is driving me to overwork and try to do anything possible to succeed through skill rather than luck. The other part of why imposter syndrome has been so hard for me is it's not just specific to one thing. It doesn't just make me feel self-conscious about, my ability to create content or my ability to lead people or my ability to manage. It is a generalized feeling that causes a lack of confidence in all that I do. When I am really anxious about if I'm good or I'm lucky, am I pulling my weight, am I not? Am I skilled at something or am I just okay at a lot of things? It takes me out of the experience. It takes me away from being present to so many of the rich aspects of building a business, hiring people, hitting a new audience goal, driving new revenue. And so to me, that has been the hardest part of having and experiencing imposter syndrome, is it takes me out of the rich experience that is building a company. So once I understood that I had imposter syndrome and that explained the feelings I was feeling, once I understood how it manifested and the impact that it had, not just in work, but on my life and my self-esteem, the next thing that I really wanted to understand is, why is this impacting me? 70% of people are plagued by imposter syndrome, 30% aren't. Why do I fall in the 70%? I think there's a few reasons. The first reason is that I'm competitive. I grew up playing sports. I was born into a Wall Street family where my mom and my dad worked on a high pressure trading floor for 2 decades. Competition is in my blood, and it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's what drives me to be the best version of myself, but it's also what forces me to put so much pressure on continuing to achieve where nothing is good enough. And when nothing is good enough, my concerns about being a one-trick pony and never building a big business again, my concerns about being just good and not great plague me. The second reason is I think I tend to draw way too much comparison. Naturally, we as people do compare ourselves to others, but I think it's something that impacts me more than the average person. And it definitely doesn't help that I work in a media company where I spend a lot of time on social media. I spend a lot of time creating at and looking at content and having constant reference points about what great business, great entrepreneurship looks like. And so when your Twitter world is a bunch of founders that have built billion-dollar companies, had multiple exits, I found it to be extremely provoking because that becomes the comparison of what success is for me. The third and final reason why imposter syndrome deeply impacts me is because I have a really tough time dealing with ambiguity. I like an answer, black or white, yes or no, right or wrong. And it comes down to my position within the company as one of the founders of a business. There's so much positive from that. I get to shape where the company goes. I get to be in control of my own destiny, be autonomous. But there are actually some really tough aspects of running a business, and that is you don't have a boss. You don't have someone to tell you whether you're doing a good job or a bad job, whether the project you worked on is a success or a failure. At the end of the day, your success or failure is determined over the long term, and it's determined by the market. It's determined whether customers choose to continue using your product or they don't. And when there's ambiguity like that, I don't know whether I'm actually doing a great job or not. And how do I know if it was me versus my co-founder? That ambiguity creates imposter syndrome, and that imposter syndrome creates a ton of anxiety in my life. So once I knew the what of what imposter syndrome is and that it's something I would deal with, once I knew how it manifested in my life and I knew why it was impacting me specifically, the last question I needed to answer for myself, and that any of you who are experiencing imposter syndrome, if you're one of the 70% of us, is how do you actually reconcile it? How do you work through and manage imposter syndrome when it's not something that can necessarily go away overnight? Well, there are 3 things that I do. I turn it into a positive. I really express gratitude, as crazy as that sounds, for imposter syndrome. On one side, it's what makes me anxious, it's what makes me doubt myself, ask myself if I'm lucky or skilled. But on the other side, it's what drives me. It's what creates this competitive flame to continue building bigger and better things and turn my visions into reality. And so I really just try to appreciate that I wouldn't be where I am right now without the fire that is created by the anxiety of imposter syndrome. And in fact, oftentimes high performers are the people that experience imposter syndrome because they put so much pressure on themselves to succeed. And so people you've heard of, world leaders, top CEOs, top executives, also experience imposter syndrome. Sheryl Sandberg, Oprah Winfrey, Maya Angelou. The CEO of Atlassian, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, talks about this experience of stepping into his first board meeting. And he was in t-shirts, shorts, sandals, and sitting there with a bunch of very serious board members talking about the future of their multi-billion-dollar company. And so what he always said to himself is in these board meetings, he would ask himself, when are these serious, very business-trained board members gonna realize that he wasn't the guy for the job, the guy to run a multi-billion-dollar company? If the CEO of Atlassian, Sheryl Sandberg, Oprah Winfrey, and Maya Angelou all experience imposter syndrome, it's probably okay that you experience it as well. And so one thing I do to manage my imposter syndrome is talking back to it. It's actually a technique that I took from exposure therapy, which is a way to treat OCD. And the whole idea is to experience the negative thoughts, the intrusive thoughts, rather than fighting them. So rather than saying, oh, I am great at things, or rather than saying, I'm not a one-trick pony, I'm gonna start many successful businesses, I actually invite the provoking thoughts as truth. I say that I'm not great at things. I say that I am lucky. I say that my co-founder is pulling my weight. And as crazy as that sounds, what it does is it it numbs and normalizes these provoking thoughts, and it no longer allows my body to latch onto them. And so that is one other way that I manage my imposter syndrome, and you can do it as well. So to bring it all together, this is what imposter syndrome is. This is how it impacts me in my life, both in career and my personal life. And this is the number of ways and strategies that I use to manage imposter syndrome on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for watching Founders Journal. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want more great content around business, entrepreneurship, and career, you can hit the subscribe button below, and you can also hit the bell so you're notified every time we publish a new video. Take it easy.